My sister dumped her daughter on me for 7 years, then lost all her kids when I tried to adopt her. Brittany gave birth to Emmy after a one-night stand with some random guy from a bar, and somehow I became more of a parent to that little girl than her own mother ever was. I was 26, married, working full-time, trying to save for a house, and still somehow ended up pacing hospital hallways at 3 in the morning holding Emmy while Brittany flirted with nurses and complained that pregnancy had ruined her body. 3 weeks later she disappeared for 4 days without warning and left Emmy with me along with half a can of formula and a diaper bag that barely had anything inside. When she finally came back she smelled like cigarettes and cheap perfume and laughed when I started crying from stress. "Relax," she said. "You act like she's your kid." Back then I still defended her. I told myself she was overwhelmed. Young. Lost. I thought maybe motherhood just scared her. But the years kept proving me wrong because Brittany never became a mother. She just kept having children. She'd vanish for days or weeks with random men while Emmy stayed with me asking why mommy never answered her calls. Sometimes Brittany would show up in the middle of the night asking for money because another boyfriend had dumped her or because she needed help again. Every single time I opened the door. My husband Marcus hated watching it happen. Not Emmy. Never Emmy. He loved that little girl from the second she learned how to run into his arms yelling his name. But he hated seeing Brittany use everyone around her while destroying herself. One day Emmy's going to pay the price for this, he warned me more than once. He was right. By the time Emmy turned 7 she barely remembered living with Brittany at all. One morning while I was braiding her hair before school she accidentally called me Mom. The second she realized it her face turned red and she whispered, "Sorry." I nearly broke down right there in the bathroom. I pulled her close and told her she never had to apologize for that. Emmy was sweet, funny, smart, and unbelievably talented. She loved singing more than anything. She'd stand on the coffee table with a hairbrush pretending she was performing at a concert while Marcus acted like her bodyguard. Her music teacher eventually told us she had real talent, so Marcus started paying for vocal lessons. Brittany didn't even know. She hadn't truly visited Emmy in almost 2 years at that point. Sometimes she'd appear in the middle of the night pounding on our door asking for money while Emmy hid upstairs because seeing her biological mother made her anxious. Brittany never asked about school, never remembered birthdays, never knew what grade Emmy was in. But legally she was still her mother, and that became a serious problem when Marcus got offered a huge job opportunity in another state. Better pay. Better schools. A safer neighborhood. Everything we'd worked toward for years. But we couldn't take Emmy with us without Brittany's permission. One night after Emmy went to bed Marcus looked at me and quietly said, "We need to adopt her." The truth hit me like a punch to the chest because she already was our daughter in every way except legally. I decided to try doing things peacefully first. I drove to Brittany's house alone because I knew Marcus would lose his mind if he saw how she lived. The smell hit me before I even reached the front door. Mold, garbage, cigarettes. One of her younger kids answered the door barefoot wearing a stained shirt. Inside was even worse. There were beer bottles everywhere, dirty diapers on the floor, rotten food on the counter, and children running around completely unsupervised. A baby screamed in another room while Brittany sat on the couch beside some tattooed guy who looked high out of his mind. One little boy was standing on a chair trying to make ramen noodles by himself because nobody was paying attention to him. I felt sick looking at them. Brittany looked up from her phone and grinned. "You got money?" I said, "I want to adopt Emmy." The room went silent before Brittany exploded. "That's my daughter." She started screaming so loudly the younger kids began crying too. "You think you're better than me because you got a nice house? You think you can steal my child?" I tried to stay calm and told her she hadn't raised Emmy in years. That only made her angrier. Her boyfriend started yelling too, telling me to get out. Then Brittany screamed something that made my blood run cold. "If you try taking Emmy from me, I'll disappear with all of them and you'll never find us." I left shaking. When I got home, Marcus took one look at me and knew something was wrong. That night I couldn't sleep because all I could picture were those children living in filth and chaos. The next morning I called Child Protective Services. I hated myself while dialing the number, but I knew I couldn't stay silent anymore. The investigation moved fast because apparently neighbors had already reported Brittany multiple times over the years for neglect, drugs, and the children wandering outside alone. My call was the final push. When CPS entered the house, they found almost no food, unsafe sleeping conditions, drug paraphernalia, and one toddler with an untreated infection. Another child hadn't even been enrolled in school for months. Brittany called me screaming after they removed the children. "You ruined my life," she yelled while Emmy quietly colored beside me at the kitchen table, completely unaware everything was changing. "No," I told her calmly. "You ruined your own life." Then I hung up. Our parents hadn't spoken to Brittany in over 10 years because of her addictions and stealing. She'd taken money, jewelry, even forged checks from my mother's account. They finally cut contact after she stole my father's pain medication after surgery. But the second they heard the kids had been removed, they stepped in immediately. My mother cried when she saw how thin one of the boys was. They took custody of the other 4 children because they refused to let them go into foster care, even though it completely changed their lives. Emmy stayed with us during the legal process because she'd already lived with us almost her entire life. The hardest part wasn't court. It was Emmy asking questions no child should ever ask. One night she climbed into my lap and whispered, "Did I do something bad to make mommy not want me?" That question broke me more than anything else. I held her while she cried and kept telling her none of this was her fault. Brittany barely showed up to court hearings. When she did, she looked angry instead of heartbroken. The judge gave her chance after chance with rehab, parenting classes, and supervised visitation. She failed every single one. Sometimes she simply didn't show up. Once she arrived visibly high. Nearly a year later, the judge officially terminated her parental rights. I still remember him looking at me and Marcus and saying, "This child already knows where her home is." I burst into tears instantly. When we told Emmy she was officially our daughter forever, she started crying too. "Forever, forever?" she asked. Marcus smiled and said, "Forever, forever." She hugged both of us so tightly I thought my heart would explode. A few months later we moved to our new state. Before we left, Emmy quietly asked if she could still keep a photo of Brittany. That hurt in a way I didn't expect, because after everything she still loved her biological mother. Children always do. So I helped her place the photo carefully into a memory box, because loving Emmy never meant erasing where she came from. It meant giving her the life she deserved. It's been 4 years now and Emmy is thriving. She's 11, still obsessed with singing, and recently won first place at a statewide youth talent competition while Marcus cried in the audience recording the whole thing. She still calls me mom and him dad. Every time I hear it, I remember that little girl waiting by windows for a mother who never came back. My parents are exhausted raising the other children, but those kids are finally safe, healthy, and loved. Brittany drifts in and out of rehab programs, and sometimes relatives hear rumors about where she is, but nobody really knows anymore. Last year she sent me a message for the first time in ages. It simply said, "Do they hate me?" I stared at it for a long time before replying, "No. But they deserved better." Then I blocked her number because giving birth doesn't automatically make someone a parent. Love does. Showing up does. Staying does. And after one of Emmy's performances last month, she hugged me tightly and whispered, "Thank you for never leaving me." And honestly, after everything, that was the moment I knew we'd both finally healed.